Welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast for small business owners who want to leave social media without losing all their clients.
Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hello, and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about leaving social media without losing all your clients. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and I cannot believe it is almost June. Where has the year gone? Where has this season gone? Season 6 of the show? Where is my summer going? It's about to be here. I probably need to make some plans. And if you, like me, need some support keeping up with work this summer, I do want to invite you to our Summer Mondays co-working club. This is a once a week co-working session where we will meet every Monday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time to get our week started. Co-working Club starts on June 9th and runs every Monday through the end of August. There's pay what you can pricing. It's super affordable and low key. We had a great time in our spring co-working club, so that's why we're keeping it going with these summer Mondays. You can head to the show notes if you would like to join us. Signups are open through the end of next week, so you have a little time to come on in. While you're signing up for Co-working Club, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest. So Molly Clark is the co-founder and CEO of Taking Stock Foods, a functional beverage company based in St. Paul, Minnesota. She is dedicated to being a leader in the conscious food movement, supporting and uplifting other founders in the makerspace through intentional vulnerability and authentic connection. And she's been doing this work for about a decade now, which means that she is bringing us so much wisdom about food-based retail businesses in this episode. So we are going to get into the lessons Molly learned from selling at farmers markets, the realities of what it took to get Taking Stock Foods products into retailers like Whole Foods, the pros and cons of selling your products through Amazon and how that can bring a lot of people to your business and also be a big barrier in your relationship with your customers. We explain a whole lot of retail acronyms like COGs, MOQs, UGC, all of the above. And Molly takes us behind the scenes on how Taking Stock Foods is totally changing their product line this year and actually moving away from their IRL retail sales in 2025. So Molly is an Off the Grid listener and an interweb member, and I was really excited when she pitched me this episode because my approach to business is really based in service-based business and based in online business. And Molly knows so much about the aspects of running a small business that I know nothing about. So she's bringing a totally different perspective to the show today. And if you yourself are interested in a retail business or a food-based business, she has so much industry information that you're just going to want to hear. And if that's not your area of business, we talk throughout about how all of these lessons can be applied to different types of business and anyone who's in business. I think that all of us has something to learn from somebody like Molly, who's super values aligned with everything Off the Grid does, and is also operating in an industry that requires navigating relationships with major retailers, with Amazon, with social media or TikTok. And I loved what she shared about how she thinks through those decisions. So there is so much goodness in today's episode. And let's go ahead and dive on into this conversation about knowing when to pivot and the realities of food retail. Hi, Molly. Welcome to Off the Grid.
Hello, Amelia. How are you?
I'm feeling really excited for this conversation. I have to say, you have one of the coolest businesses of anyone I've talked to on the podcast. And it's like quite different than, my stream of service providers whom I love and am one up that come through. So I'm really pumped for this conversation today because I think you're going to bring us a lot of insight just from like a different perspective than we normally hear on the pod.
Yeah, I'm excited to bring the product-based business perspective into the room.
In this episode, you're going to guide us through a bit of your journey with your business and how you and your co-founder Maddie started it, its beginning in farmers markets, how it evolved, and then you're going to take us to this like really big pivot that you all made at the start of 2025. So, listeners, I don't know, buckle up, strap in. What do we say?
Get ready for the sunset sunrise spectrum that we're going to be talking about.
Hell yeah, I can't wait. Okay. So, Molly, can you take us to the beginning of Taking Stock Foods? Like, how did this business get started? How did you and your co-founder come together? And give me a peek behind the scenes at like that first farmers market you ended up at.
So Maddie and I both have restaurant backgrounds, and that's where we met in 2011, I think. I was staging, which is like industry term for interning at a farm to table restaurant. She was fabricating, industry term for cutting up meat. And we like locked eyes, and it was just like past life washed over, like, oh my God, the most amazing platonic love story you could imagine. So that was amazing. And it turned out that we were also really complementary working together. Over time, we've realized that we have very different skill sets. She's very granular, details oriented. I am like big picture flying in the clouds. And that's been amazing. So we started out actually with a restaurant concept that we developed for about 6 months and realized that we didn't want to own a restaurant. We were trying to break the mold. And as we were building out our first schedule, we're like, we're never going to get to see each other. We're never going to be able to get out of this and like break through to a successful business where we're just having a good time together. So we pivoted and started making broth, which had been like the base product for all the recipes that we had been developing. And we were like, why don't people make high quality broth to sell at stores? Like, there's a huge gap in the market. True, but it turns out lots of reasons that that doesn't happen, which we learned over the course of about 10 years. But at the beginning, we just were sort of like bright eyed, bushy tailed in our late 20s, early 30s, and felt like our restaurant experience was really going to translate to a packaged food product. Again, lots of learning there. But we sold our first bone broth at a farmer's market, an indoor farmer's market. We're based in Minnesota in December of 2015. And have basically been evolving and iterating since that point. We're calling our business right now Taking Stock Foods 3.0. I'd say that there's like really 3 versions of the business that have been customer facing, but we've gone through a lot of different changes on the way.
Yeah, I can only imagine everything it's taken to get to where you are now. So you started at the farmers market. I know we have plenty of listeners who want to get started at markets. And I know that you have thoughts on like the pros, the cons, the good, the not so great of that approach. Can you take us to that farmers market and how you started and what you learned from maybe that 1.0 version of the business?
Mhm. Yeah, I learned a lot in that 1.0 version, but over the course of time and mentoring other businesses, I'd say what I'm going to talk about is more just like a larger perspective, incorporating a lot of experiences I've seen. So, one of the industry terms that I use is consumer product goods, which is CPG. That's like thrown around a ton. And a consumer product good is a product that you use and then you need to repurchase. So, it's not as much like a greeting card. It's more like a toilet paper like purchase or some like a lotion or food, certainly, but less like a widget. So, in the world of consumer product goods, a lot of people get started at farmers markets because there's a low barrier to entry. In certain places, there's cottage laws, which means that you can straight up prepare food in your home and sell it at farmers markets without like a ton of oversight. Also, it's like a short season. You can sustain the whole lift yourself really as an individual proprietor if you wanted to. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is a great way to get my business idea out there and get some feedback." I think that I've heard you speak before on this podcast about the importance of thinking about where you're going ultimately. Because there's a lot of people who I know who are totally satisfied with farmers markets, and a lot of your listeners too, I'm sure, like to support like community initiatives and those kind of spaces. And that is an amazing goal if that's what your goal is. But if you are just like, this is so great, I'm going to wind up in Whole Foods, that's, I think, where a lot of people get into trouble because a farmer's market product is not the same as something that's gonna show up at retail, and there's a few, like, main reasons why. One of the things that happens at a farmer's market is that you are there selling your product. You're right in front of the customer, and there's also a belief by the customer that, "Here's the person who's making this product. This is great. They're a woman of color. They really align with who I am as an individual." And that's all part of your positioning and messaging that I think a lot of people at farmers markets don't recognize as being communicated in that space. When your product moves onto a shelf, it's actually pretty difficult to get that message across through packaging and the little, local tag underneath, and it's typically not as compelling of a message. So it's so key and important for people to think about, how am I differentiating? And what is actually important to this consumer about my product? And that's something that you really can double down at farmers markets about. So somebody saying, "Oh, I normally buy Pacific bone broth, but I'll totally buy this product because I think it's better." Ask them, "Why do you think it's better?" Make sure that the things about that are showing up when you ultimately do wind up with a packaged product on a shelf or online. One of the things that's really challenging about retail specifically, and we've had our products in Whole Foods and lots of, like, local, like, natural organic sort of grocery stores, is there are so many opaque costs that you have no even, like, inkling of what they're going to be, and it's really difficult to understand things. Brokerage fees, promotional spend, slotting fees, distribution costs, buybacks. Like, these are things that if you're listening and you don't know what that means, it's because nobody does. And when you wind up in a retail store, these are things that are really gonna come into play in a huge way. A lot of people think that their cost of goods sold and their margin is really good at a farmer's market, and then they wind up going to retail and they're making cents on the dollar, and all of a sudden their business is underwater and they're taking on debt, and it's a super stressful experience. One of my good friends, Kate LaBrosse, has a website, katelabrosse.com, and one of her lead magnets on the website is a margins calculator that you can sign up for her newsletter and then get this calculator that not only helps you put in the costs of your ingredients and everything else, but it also takes into account those later stage spends. It is an invaluable resource, and, like, everyone I talk to is like, "I wish I knew that when I was starting to really understand if it was viable for me to be a retail product."
I feel like what I'm really hearing you say is that if you are a product-based business owner, especially in the food space, one, farmers markets are a great place to start because your costs can be relatively low coming into it. And that like face time with your customers is invaluable at the beginning. That's definitely what I'm hearing. And I feel like that is something that online business does not replicate, right? Like you can put up a website and you never know and never talk to the people who show up for it. If you are at the farmer's market, like if somebody is there, if they're walking by, whether they buy something for you or not, you can engage in that conversation. And I really hear you on the sense of like, when you are standing there with your product, it's bringing your identity to it. It's bringing your personal style to it. It's like bringing all these layers of how the people walking by and purchasing from you like are perceiving the product. And that's so baked in to a market experience, I think farmers market or like a craft market even. Just like the fact that you're standing there selling the thing is a really important piece of that. And then the other thing I feel like I heard you say was success at a farmer's market does not directly translate to success in retail, especially in the food space. Like, I think in the more like creative product space, there is a sort of retail world where it's just like you're wholesaling, you're shipping it out, you can kind of figure out those costs yourself. But when you're looking at getting into big retailers like the Whole Foods of the world, I've also heard this from product based people trying to get into Target. There's just so many layers of costs and these like opaque things that are happening that you never know until you get far enough down the line. So, it sounds like knowing if you want that path is pretty important to figure out pretty early on in your business.
It's totally true, and honestly, like, I wonder if the community that I have around food and product-based businesses is unique to the Twin Cities where I live, or if it's just kind of part of the industry, because there are so many people who have been so generous with their time to try to help me figure this stuff out and give me a leg up, but another piece of that is, like, are they the same type of business as you? I think that for any business owner who's looking for mentorship, finding somebody who actually understands the type of business you have and is able to advise you around it, especially if you're a startup. Because, like, talking to somebody from General Mills, as exciting as that would be, when they have no budgetary concerns on the same level as ours, they're gonna have advice that is not really a right fit a lot of the time. And it's important to understand as an emerging business owner to advocate for the fact that, like, it's exciting what you're doing, and the reason why people wanna talk to you is because it's exciting, and to not feel like, "Oh, I have to talk to this person and take their opinion into consideration if it's really not advice that's valuable to me."
Yeah. As we cultivate our business communities, it's really important to know like, okay, this person is my peer and on all the levels. Like we're in the same industry, we run the same type of business, we have a similar clientele, maybe even like that's how I consider them a peer. And then also to have those like key people who are maybe from a totally different industry or who can help me find an idea that I can't see when I'm just in my little world. So I always think of one of my good biz friends, Grace, her and her husband run a construction company. And that is so outside the realm of my little online business. But sometimes she'll tell me something they're doing, and I'm like, oh, I could totally do that. And it's really nice to have both, but you have to know and be really clear on like, okay, this is the person I'm going to because they get it and they are existing in the same space as me. And this is the person I go to when I need a like totally different kind of idea. And listeners listening to this, like you should also know what off the grid is for you. Like, are we similar to your business? Are you a service-based business owner like me, which is often where my perspective comes from? Are you a product-based business owner like Molly? Does your business look something much more like one of our other guests? Like, we have to be really discerning as we build business community because you're so right, Molly. Like, we can get really far off track trying to implement marketing and business advice that's never going to work for our business. And this is kind of my whole like spiel about social media, right? It's like a certain type of marketing methodology that doesn't work for many, if not most businesses, but we're told it should work for all of us.
That's so right. And I want people who have this creative juice and the spark of excitement around their business to feel inspired and empowered that they are bringing value to the world with the thing that they're making. And to keep that energy going throughout, because there's a lot of times when you're going to feel lost on your path, especially if you've been in business for 10 years like I have, and to have that empowerment exist inside and not always need to be like an extra, like somebody telling you from the outside that you're doing the right thing. Because they don't know. They don't know.
No, they don't. It's hard enough for us to know most of the time. Definitely nobody outside of it knows. Okay, I want to go back to your story though, because I want to hear why did you and Maddie decide to move from farmers market to retail? We've kind of talked about the fact that you have, but I want to talk about how you made that decision together and why you decided to do that and what went into it.
We had a lot of opportunity at the time coming out of farmers markets, a lot of interest in the products. There's an amazing food cooperative system in the Twin Cities, and a lot of the farmers markets are located close to, and those are great, like, first stage grocers who are willing to carry products like ours and willing to work with a small business who wants to distribute directly instead of going through a wholesale or distribution method. And so we started doing that and having success and feeling really, like, buoyed and like, "Wow, okay, like, let's take on the world." And that was wonderful, but the frozen product was, like, actually killing us. Like, we were working an 18-hour production day followed by an 8-hour packaging day, and at our peak, we were doing that twice a week plus farmers markets, and we were both kind of, like, going through some mental health stuff too. Probably caused by that. I laugh, it's not really funny. Looking back, it's sort of funny to think about, but at the time, it was, like, a critical moment where we were wondering, "What's next?" So, we decided that if the business were to grow, we did not wanna build out our own facility, and we decided to start working with somebody called a co-manufacturer who would make our formula, our recipe to our specifications. And they also had the ability to scale the product, make it in larger quantities. They had the ability to package it in a shelf-stable format, which extended the shelf life and also would put us in a part of the grocery store that was more desirable. And it just was like a new level of sophistication for the business. So, that was our end of Taking Stock 1.0 was the decision that we were losing our minds and we didn't wanna be done, but we couldn't keep doing it this way. So, we went on a hiatus for 18 months as we reformulated to a shelf-stable product. I had a child, and then we launched the shelf-stable product in December of 2019. 2 months after maternity leave was over for me, and then the pandemic came into play, so what a world. What a time to be
Yeah,
alive.
it's a lot of change.
Lot going on there. The postpartum experience was pretty intense, and I've mentioned community a lot already. I am, like, surrounded by amazing people who made that experience as good as it could be, but there was a lot of uncertainty and doubt that I'm sure a lot of people can recall. It wasn't that long ago. And I also noticed right away the businesses that I was familiar with who were able to pivot online were making hay, and those of us in retail really struggled, a lot of us, especially people selling through stores that were more high end. It was like there was a lot of cherry picking, like, grocery shopping style where people would go to a variety of grocery stores to do their shopping kind of ended, and people were going to Costco, they were going to Target, they were going to a place where they could do everything at once. So that was a moment, but it was also a huge benchmark for us. That was when we got into Whole Foods. That was when we had our largest retail footprint to date. Maddie and I both felt an enormous sense of success, and she also pulled our business through my maternity and through a lot of the doubt that I was having at that time. Like, Maddie was really the one who brought that second iteration to life and was, like, project managing and all of it. So, it was a really cool moment for us to realize that one of us could step away and the other one could take on the work, and we were so glad to have each other again in our community.
Yeah, okay. I have a few questions around that stage. So, is it a huge financial investment to move to co-manufacturing? Like,
Yes, I mean, it depends on what type of product you're making, but minimum order quantities, MOQs, are, like, a huge part of scale, and I think the assumption is that you're gonna sell through your entire production run every time. And when that doesn't happen, you still have all this inventory to move through. So, yes, it's a huge lift, and if you don't know where that product is going, that's a tricky situation to find yourself in.
and so you manage to move through that, you get into Whole Foods. How does the online distribution come into it for you all? Because I know you were distributing through Amazon, I believe. Like, was that a pandemic related move? Did that come later? Tell me about that piece as well.
Yeah, I think that Amazon for us the pandemic made it clear to me that Amazon was something that we should consider strongly. There's a lot of different places where you can sell your products, food products online. There's like Thrive Market and lots of places like that too. But when I was doing my research, Amazon had the highest conversion rate, and just knowing my own behavior and those of folks around me, a lot of people even use Amazon as a search engine to find products like this. At that time, too, it's hard to remember now, but food products were not a big part of Amazon's product offering. And at that moment, suddenly housewares, food products, all of that just, like, blew up. So it became a much more viable option. I'm a kind of fight the system person mentally all the time, and it was a big reckoning for me to think about what doing business with Amazon meant for the business overall. I'll get more into, like, how taking stock sort of became its own thing eventually, because I think at this stage, it was still very much a reflection of Maddie and my values, and it felt like there was a lot of personal angst around making decisions on behalf of the business that I didn't think were gonna have to happen. However, so Amazon came online and we've always worked with somebody who has, like, managed our listings for us, and that was a requirement for us. We weren't interested in learning Amazon, and we actually recently started working with a company about a year ago who are amazing local husband and wife team in Minneapolis, and they've really shown us the potential of what Amazon can offer. And, having a small business on Amazon, there's a lot of yes and no's for joining forces with Amazon in this way, but compared to traditional retail and distribution, it is, I think, a quicker go-to-market strategy than a lot of these other things.
Yeah, I really hear you on the personal angst of the decision making. And I think that something that is really always really interesting to me is like the decisions we make for our business and the way you're describing. Like sometimes the business needs things that us as individuals maybe are not so interested in or feel so aligned with. And we have to make decisions at times. I mean, I think that there's probably a good argument to make that it's like, well, there's like taking stock that's on Amazon, or there's just like not taking stock, right? Like, how do we decide between like, well, I can make this choice that feels potentially problematic, full of angst, but it is the path forward that allows me to like see the future viability of this business in a way that like otherwise you might have been like, well, guess we'll scale all the way back down to the farmer's market because the way we've scaled up, like there's a way that I think in scaling up, your options must expand and they really narrow. It's like because the bigger you get, the more you can be entrenched in sort of the systems that exist, the powers that be. And then you're navigating those options as opposed to feeling like I am an autonomous creator and I just do what I want against the system. It's like, well, no, if I want to operate at this level, I'm actually going to have to engage the system and I have to be a part of it. I have to figure out what that means to me. So I'm so curious about this piece you mentioned. Like, how did taking stock become something that felt bigger than just you and Maddie and felt like, okay, now the business is an entity of its own, perhaps, and it's not just our personal feelings and decisions. It's something else that we're shepherding, guiding, whatever it might be.
Maddie and I have been in conversation about this for years, and I think it's always been easier for her. She's more of like the back end finance operations person, and I'm more of the sales and marketing. And what wound up happening, we've been involved in a lot of different incubators over the years, and there was sort of just a bunch of different things that happened in 2024. We were part of this statewide business competition called Minnesota Cup, where we invited lots of eyes on our business in a way that we hadn't before. We also participated in a, like, business accelerator through the University of St. Thomas, where I first heard about your show. One of the people who spoke to us at that time was on your show, Lauren Ash.
Oh, yeah, I love Lauren.
So that was funny. And through all of that, I realized, like, we needed to do more primary research. Like, something wasn't working. We weren't making the sales, we weren't getting the growth that we anticipated, and I went into intense, like, research mode, and I think that that really helped me understand the business already was operating as its own thing. The business was already something that people were interacting with without me in the room, and I would do myself a service and the business a service if I was able to start treating it more in that way.
Hey there, lovely Off the Grid listener. We're taking a quick break from this episode because I want to make sure that you know that you can become an Off the Grid sponsor and share your work here on the podcast during a mid-roll ad like this or in a pre-roll ad that airs before every single episode on our feed. In past seasons of the show, I have shared some of my favorite affiliate partners. If you've heard the Flowdesk ad, you know what that's all about. But since season 3, I've also been partnering with listeners like you to showcase your work and the amazing, inspiring things that you're creating and sharing with the world. I know I don't have to tell you this, but Off the Grid listeners are smart, fun, values-centered business owners who create and share impactful things on and offline. We are writers, artists, designers, wellness practitioners, service providers, shop owners, and product makers who know a lot about our craft, but need more support making the business side of things thrive. If that sounds like the kind of crew that you want to get your work, your products, your services, your books, your free lead magnets in front of, I hope that you will head to the show notes and learn more about placing an ad on the podcast today. One of our very happy sponsors from last year wrote to me and said this: "Placing an ad on Off the Grid was hands down the best investment I made last year. My cost per lead ended up being around $6, which is 70% less than Meta's average, and nearly all of those leads are still highly engaged a year later. On top of that, many have become customers, bringing in over 13 times the return on my investment." If you would like to hear your work shared by me and featured in a spot like this, you can head to the show notes to learn more about our ad opportunities. And whether or not you decide to sponsor an episode, I am so grateful that you listen to the show, and I hope that you will check out some of our partners this season. They have amazing free and paid offerings for you, so please make sure you click through when you hear them. Okay, enough about our sponsorship opportunities. Let's go ahead and dive back in to this episode. If I'm charting correctly so far, recapping for myself and for listeners, we had the farmer's market to local grocer stage, which was primarily like a frozen and shelf stable product there. And then in 2.0, you bring the co-manufacturer on board, you get into Whole Foods, you move on to Amazon, everything just scales up in such a big way. But now we're going into stage 3, which is a big pivot that you all have made, totally changed your product type at the beginning of this year. So can you tell me a little bit about how primary research and those personal and business realizations led to this third stage of the business?
Yeah. So I did all this primary research. Maddie was at grad school at this point. So, this was my opportunity to take the driver's seat and really actually enter into the role of CEO of the company. She's the COO of the company now. We defined those roles for ourselves, which was really helpful because we had always sort of operated side by side, and that wasn't really reflective of how we wanted to be in the business anymore. So I solicit all of this feedback. I'm working with student teams at the University of Minnesota to stand in aisles at grocery stores and watch people doing stuff. And basically everything that I am getting back is it's not working, on every level. Our numbers aren't working, the value prop isn't working, the packaging isn't working, the website, everything was coming back, and so, that sounds grim. It was a reckoning. Not to say that it wasn't working, but it wasn't, working super well, and we also at this time started doing a lot of business development work to just, what is the business? What is the business at its core? Rather than being what do we make, and that defines what the business is, we started looking at it the other way around. And that, I think, was when I started really realizing, oh my gosh, this business is so much more than me or Maddie. And also, I started trying to cultivate joy in other areas of my life and sort of pull away from the business a little bit and, like, treat the business more as work instead of treating it as an extension of myself.
Yeah, not being so enmeshed. And that makes sense. You like gave yourself a job title so it can be a job.
Yeah,
Okay, this is a very specific question, but I'm just curious, like, when you say the business isn't working and looks grim, there's a part of me that's like, are you bankrupt? Are you broke? Like,
right, right. I
how,
mean,
how did that
not
happen?
broke, we're making some money, like, it's not supporting us, and I think that that was another thing that we needed to start thinking about was, like, when is the business gonna start working for us instead of us working for the business? But we decided a long time ago to keep going, and we have check-ins annually, we do retreats, we, like, check in with each other, like, what compromise are we willing to make? When is this over? And I think we asked ourselves that question every year for 8 years. Like, when do we know that this is done? And it felt so refreshing actually to be like, this business isn't working, but we're not ready to not be in business anymore. And in fact, speaking of assets, now we have 10 years of experience under our belt. What if instead of trying to fix what's broken within the existing business, what if we paid it forward and created a business with 10 years of experience? And that's what Taking Stock 3.0 is going to be, is like, when this releases, hopefully the new product is going to be online or soon to be. But that was such an exciting moment to be like, "We don't need to feel stuck in this anymore. What are the things we hate to do with our business? What are the things that we've learned that we couldn't have known that we wish we didn't have to do? Why don't we just eliminate that from our business model? Like, let's just not do that anymore."
Oh my gosh, I can feel how that transformation took so much weight off. And I just want to pause and say, like, what a beautiful invitation for reinvention that you gave yourselves in that moment. And sometimes you have to look around and be like, actually, we're going to scrap this way of doing things, but we're going to take all the experience we have and start the business we would start now. So tell us what that business is. Like, what did you decide to do that is different going forward?
So, channel, for anyone who doesn't know, is, like, where you're selling your products. And our distribution channel, I had discovered or decided that was going to retail with the product was something that we would have more power to do when we were already making 2 to 5 million in annual sales, which was not what we were making at this point. And I was like, instead of trying to build our business in retail, why don't we build our business as an e-com business? Once we reach that financial threshold, then we can have better bargaining and leverage to advocate for ourselves going into a retail situation. So we decided to eliminate all of our distribution, just cut it out, and go with an online strategy. So the product is gonna be sold on Amazon and TikTok Shop are the 2 places we're planning on launching it. And because of that, we had to figure out a product that would actually work online. And what we decided was to create a powdered product instead of the liquid broth that we had been making. So we got to get back to our roots and, like, really think about flavor profiles and what would be exciting. The consultant that I mentioned before, Kate LaBrosse, really helped bring some interesting market analysis into this space that was somewhere between food and supplement. So, for those who aren't familiar, I didn't really go into it, but bone broth is basically broth, but it's cooked in a way that a lot of the nutrients and minerals and collagen from the connective tissue and bone itself are, like, broken down and in the liquid of the broth. So, this was going to be a bone broth, so it already has this functional quality of, like, gut health, and we were like, "What if we really dive into the gut health world and go after gut health as our unique positioning, as something that differentiates us from everything else on the market?" So, we found this amazing upcycled ingredient which means it's like a byproduct from an industry that already exists, which is a wheatgrass prebiotic fiber that has all of this clinical research done around it where, like, when you think of a lot of prebiotic sodas, some people associate that with kind of, like, tummy not great feelings, so this product is, like, much more mild and gentle on the tummy. And then Taking Stock 1.0 and 2.0 were both appealing to the masses, but we realized that, like, we really weren't appealing to any specific customer in doing that. So we decided to go really narrow and really deep with a consumer who was already using bone broth and had some really specific qualities about them that the prebiotic additive would really, really speak to them.
Yeah. I really am starting to get this sense of like just like a very cyclical journey that you've been on, right? Like starting at the farmers markets where you have that like direct one-on-one connection with the market, like quite literally, like you're at the market, you're talking to the customer. And then it's like on the scaled up retail path, it can feel, I just think that there's so much distance between a product maker and like the shopper at Whole Foods. And I think that a lot of major retailers don't bridge that distance for smaller businesses, right? And so you can, like, you get a lot of messaging around, like, if you want to scale up, it's got to be for more people. So it's got to be for everybody. So you got to have like options and all of this. But now I'm really hearing you and like, you decided to shift perspective. You did more market research with your consultant and friend, and that brought you back to a much more like specific product for a specific type of person. And I think across the board, specificity is like becoming more important than ever in any product or service.
So much. And, like, in food right now, having premium positioning is, like, everything because people are turning more to store brands than they ever have. They're not really interested in shopping a brand that's the equivalent of a store brand at a higher price. Like, it really needs to be very different from what's available. So, I'm really grateful that we did do the work that we did because I do feel like we're coming with something that is unique and something also that, like, our consumer cannot make in their house. Like, they cannot replicate this product in their own kitchen, nor do we want them to. And, like, we're eliminating we're eliminating that piece that was, like, always with us. And also, like, are you an ingredient? Are you a sipping broth? Like, now we're like, "We are a sipping broth. This is how you make it. This is when you use it." And that feels like just the best. I'm so excited to have that dialed in.
Yeah, I love to hear that. So, what happened when you like communicated this to your community or your customers? Like, hey, 2.0 is ending, we're starting 3.0, or at the very least, I'm sure you didn't quite say it to them like that, but like the broths are discontinuing, we're moving to a different type of product. How did you share the news or tell people about it?
Yeah, so, like, based off of what I've learned about owned channels from Off the Grid, I consider our newsletter to be, like, our primary communication strategy, and, like, we wanna have, like, a warm pen pal kind of vibe and have people feel, like, a desire to engage and, like, feel like they're part of a conversation with Taking Stock Foods. This is probably, like, the last stage of me letting go, and I'll probably have to keep letting go, but when I sent that newsletter out, people didn't really respond at all, and you're a member of our newsletter list, so you saw I sent a follow-up email to my specific contacts being like, "Did you receive this email?" Because 'Cause I've done a lot of email audience culling and, like, refinement, and ultimately what I figured out is that I think I've refined it too far. Like, I think that people straight up were not receiving the email, a lot of them, but it was really humbling for me to realize that this news, like, wasn't as important to other people as it was to me. Like, I thought that there was gonna be this, like, "Oh my god, this is the biggest deal. Taking Stock isn't available anymore," and I think in their own personal ways, a lot of our community did feel that, but with everything else going on in their lives, it was, like, really not the primary thing that they were thinking about.
Okay, my marketer hat is definitely coming on. So, indulge me in a question or two. How did you build your email list? Like, if you're selling on Amazon, do you have any access to your customers directly? Like, do you get any information about them?
Right, no, owned channel is even more important when you're building off of social media and large platforms like Amazon. Basically, what I'm trying to do is to funnel people from Amazon as, like, their first touch with the business back into the newsletters by setting up, like, promos or community engagement elements, because, no, you don't have access to their information, and I think a lot of brands who sell their products don't understand what a problem that is. So, in our profiles, we try to feed people back to the website, but Amazon isn't like, "Yeah, definitely link out to your website." So, in our packages that we sell on Amazon, we try to include, like, paper things that encourage people to engage with the brand on our own channels.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I think is definitely like a market difference between a lot of the businesses I work with and then like businesses distributing through Amazon, right? Because there's like owned marketing channels and then owned distribution channels, even maybe we could distinguish between. Because for me, like if I'm marketing on a non owned channel, like when somebody buys from me, I have their contact information and I can contact them directly. But I'm hearing you say, like, even then, you don't have their information. And when you say that you're like putting papers or things in, is, like, Amazon doing that for you? Are you all shipping out or you have an Amazon warehouse shipper?
I mean, like, there's so many different ways you can do it. Fulfilled by owner, fulfilled by Amazon. They can add, like, a white glove element to your packaging, or you can have it pre-packed and then shipped to them. There's so much complication around that.
Many options and all different choices depending on your business model and needs. Understood, understood. Okay. So what does happen next? Like, we're recording this a month or two before the new product will launch. What does that lead up look like for you all? Like, what are you working on now, and what has to happen between this place where you've discontinued your broth products and are putting out your powdered products?
Yeah, so we're, like, pulling a lot of levers right now. The turnaround on the product being developed and, like, going to market is going to be, like, very small. We are not even done developing the product yet, and we are hoping to be online in, like, 3 months or less. So, that's bonkers and completely different than the last time we did this. We are going to do a, like, crowdfund presale to try to, like, build buzz, and we've also just totally focused our intent to have our products available exclusively on Amazon and TikTok Shop to start out, and then we're gonna probably activate our Shopify later on.
Okay, fascinating. Why TikTok Shop, and how are you feeling about that? I mean, obviously, I'm the person out here being like, "We do not TikTok," but we also have already talked about, like, sometimes your business needs things that may not totally align with your values. So I would just love to hear a little bit about how you made that decision and what it's looking like for you.
Yeah, from our experience selling at stores, one of the things that we're really excited about with Amazon and TikTok Shop are analytics and really being able to develop our customer and understand more about them straight out the gate. When you're selling at a retail store, you just do not have access to any of that information in real time or anytime, really. So, our TikTok Shop specifically was chosen because we have, like, a community here who's also doing it and seeing success on that platform. We are going to have, like, basically a static profile. We're gonna be posting, like, once a week to Taking Stock Foods, the handle, and then we're gonna be leveraging influencers. And we're gonna be able to, like, really choose influencers who are speaking to our people, and they're going to have the added benefit of being able to showcase the product, give, like, outside affirmation to the value and interest of the product, show consumers what time of day they're using the product, all of these things that are just going to get our customers up to speed with a product that's unique to market. The flavor's unusual. It's like one of them is like a warm spice, kind of like pumpkin spice. And then the other one is very herby and it has like peppermint and stuff in it. We're excited about setting expectations through user-generated content so that when people wind up with this product, maybe because they're interested in the function, they're not completely floored at the unusual flavor profiles that we've chosen to go with.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, it sounds like powdered broth, but some of the flavor profiles remind me of like teas almost. Like we're really existing between those spaces, which is really interesting.
It is so interesting, Amelia. Thank you.
Gotta be excited about it. Or not have to. I am genuinely excited about it. But what I'm really taking away from this conversation is just like so much wisdom from your like firsthand experience in these very different business models. And I'm hoping that listeners, as you're tuned in, like can really think through like, okay, there are these different pathways forward. Like if I am someone who's starting at a farmer's market, it might be helpful to know that actually what I thrive on is that direct relationship with my customer. And like my goal is to succeed at the farmer's market level. And I'm not going to get distracted by a pull to retail or a pull to TikTok shop or anything else. Like I think you can run a successful business that stays in that sphere.
Yes.
And then I'm also hearing a bit in your journey, like, I can imagine if TikTok Shop existed when you and Maddie were like moving out of the farmer's market space, maybe you would have gone down this huge, like scaled up retail path. But it's also helpful to remember, like, it didn't exist. Like TikTok Shop was not a thing in 2018, 2019 when you're making these like big decisions and changes. And also, I think the landscape, we've talked about Whole Foods and Amazon like they're separate, but also during this time period, they merged, right? Like the landscape is always shifting and you can be responsive to what's happening around you and stay true to like your needs and desires for your business. And I think that is really beautiful and important. And you've really laid out different business paths for these different models. And I'm hoping listeners can kind of clue in and see like, oh, if what you love is that direct interaction, farmers market is your place. If what you love is like working with content creators and seeing your product on the internet, UGC is the way to go. If what you really want is to like be on shelves in stores, the other thing I heard you say, Molly, is like, well, you might actually need to scale up quite big before that becomes a pathway available to you. And are you interested in taking that journey? Is a good question to ask when you're starting the journey, not when you're like way down that path.
And like, you know your business best. You're probably going to be the person who is doing 90% of the lift for this business. So, like, what are you prepared to do? There's so many different ways to accomplish that goal, but don't feel like you're being pigeonholed into a go-to-market strategy that does not reflect what you wanna do. Like, you don't have to. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Is there any other advice you would like to offer to folks who are tuned in today about your business journey or any stage of it?
I think that, like, the solo entrepreneur journey is really lonely. I hear that from my friends who are solo entrepreneurs, and I'm just feeling this enormous energy around cultivating community right now and really trying to connect with folks and be supportive. To that end, I have, like, some business shout outs that I wanna do. So, in my little neck of the woods over here, I've got some business besties who make amazing products that you might not know about. Lip Esteem is a brand that makes, like, natural lipsticks. They have a color called Rondo, which is my absolute favorite. I'm pretty fair-skinned, and it is, like, a bold color, but if you wear it lightly, it's amazing. SJC Body Love makes really amazing natural body products, and they have an uplifting fragrance that, like, is gonna blow your mind. Mazah is 2 good friends of mine. They make Afghani American sort of like cilantro chutneys. They have a lot of different products, but that one is my favorite. And finally, there's a brand called Heti, Heti, that makes like low dose CBD beverages based out of like native traditional flavor profiles and foraging. And they have a product called River Path that's like a blueberry flavor that's, like, so nice. So, like, those are 4 people 4 brands, right? We're not our brands. Okay, we've gotten this through, but, like, really trying to show up and rep other brands and people who are doing the good work and show that there are brands that are successful out there that are pushing through, that are making it happen, and when you support these small brands, it's not just, like, a nice thing to do, but you're really getting a quality product that, like, once these brands scale, you're probably not gonna get them at this level of quality and care. So, all the more reason to support small business.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those. Listeners, we will link everything in the show notes if you click through to the Off the Grid website to find them. All right. Well, thank you, Molly, for being here with me today, and also to your co-founder, Maddie, for all of the taking stock time and effort and energy spent building your beautiful business. Thank you, listeners, for spending this time with us. I hope that your brain, like mine, is like spinning like full speed, thinking about everything that we've learned today and how it can be integrated and implemented in so many different contexts. I know I will be reflecting on this for quite a while. But for now, we're gonna, I don't know, go sip some broth, go do whatever else we do with our afternoons. And until next time, we will see you off the grid. Thanks for listening to Off the Grid. Don't forget to grab your free Leaving Social Media toolkit at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. This podcast is a Softer Sounds production. Our music is by Melissa Caitlin Carter of Making Audio Magic, and our logo is by Natelier Studio. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and until next time, I'll see you off the grid and on the interweb.
Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really